Hey there, singers. This is Sarah Ramsey from the Vocal Lab, and I'm thrilled to share something special with you. Are you ready to take your vocal performance to the next level? Introducing Encore, the Performance Incubator, a transformative 12-week online program designed specifically for singers like you who want to master their voice and command the stage. With Encore, you'll experience personalized laser coaching that targets your unique vocal challenges, and you'll learn in a supportive community environment. This program covers everything from mastering breath control and vocal techniques to developing a confident stage presence and connecting emotionally with your audience. And the best part? We're offering a special beta price for this first run. It's just $600 for the entire 12-week program. Plus, if you're a Vocal Lab member, you get an additional discount. So don't miss this opportunity to transform your singing and join a community of passionate vocalists. Registration is open now and closes June 7th. Head on over to sarahramsey.com/encore to secure your spot. Let's make this your best performance yet with Encore.
When I first started, the first song I wrote, and I got a SOCAN check.
Yeah.
Okay. So I decided that what I learned about instruments, like synths and stuff that I can't even play, I realized that there's an inspiration. Like, I'll buy a guitar because it inspires me.
Yeah.
Not because everybody else is using it. So back when I was an assistant, oh my God, I wrote a song and I got money. So I decided that all the money that I get from writing, I would invest back into buying a guitar, an amplifier, a synth, whatever, a piece of recording gear. And that was just my inspiration. I separated. So anything I did work-wise, that's my family and everything else. But it's constantly being inspired with stuff. I still do it.
Yeah.
I still do it. I think I bought 3 things here. But when I get home, I've got to start getting rid of all that stuff.
Yeah.
I got way too much of it. Yeah, it's that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Downsizing.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I am thrilled today to have with me Bob Rock, who is an iconic figure in the music production world. And he began his illustrious career in the late 70s with the Canadian band The Payolas. This initial venture set the stage for a groundbreaking journey through the music industry. Bob quickly demonstrated a keen ear for production, working alongside Bruce Fairbairn on major albums for Loverboy, Bon Jovi, and Aerosmith. His solo production debut came in 1988 with Kingdom Come, catapulting him into the spotlight. Bob's collaboration with Motley Crue on Dr. Feelgood achieved a #1 spot and over 7 million global sales. His landmark partnership with Metallica produced the legendary Black Album, which not only topped the charts worldwide, but has sold over 17 million copies. Rock's production mastery continued with artists like Veruca Salt, Bryan Adams, and Metallica with the San Francisco Symphony. In recent years, Bob has worked with a diverse array of talent, including Michael Bublé, whose album To Be Loved won a Grammy under Bob's direction. His sustained excellence was honored in 2007 with an induction into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, celebrating a career that continues to influence the music industry profoundly.
That's so nice.
And every word is true.
Well,
thanks for joining me here today, Bob.
It's great.
I appreciate it. We were chatting before we started, but I have had the pleasure of knowing you since I was probably in diapers.
Yes. Yeah. You and Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of lived at the studio.
Yeah.
Because of your parents. I guess everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
It was a great wonderful place, Little Mountain.
It was. And that was sort of where you...
I started I got my job December 16th, 1976.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was 3. No. Yes, I was 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was Yeah, that was before Josh was even in the picture then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were just around when I was a kid, and that was so many, again, we were talking about this before we started, but so many of you guys came out of that little mountain and went on to do just some really big things in the music industry. It was a
great time.
Yeah.
A lot of very talented people.
Yeah.
From Vancouver.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about sort of, how you got started in your journey in the business, how you got where you are today?
Well, really, it started, Roger Monk, who was an engineer at Little Mountain. I did a small recording course. I lived in Victoria, musician, and I heard this ad. And so I did the course, and another guy, Ron Vermeulen, or Ron Obvious, and myself both got hired December 1976. And we started off as being assistants, kind of cleaning setups and stuff. And through the years, Dave Slagter at the time, now David Hayes, and Roger Monk, they basically taught Ron and I everything about being an engineer. So that was the first step, is learning. Now, I've always had this love of the records and how they sounded. So it was a dream come true.
Yeah.
So I was doing like jingles, as we discussed, AVs, and just learning how to be an engineer. And then I don't know the year, but I guess Bruce Fairburn, because Ron and I did a lot of punk bands and the new wave bands in the 80s, and the Palos came out of that. But there was an amazing scene here in Vancouver. So we did that after we worked during the day. And so it got us a chance to be more than just engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess because of the punk scene, Bruce gave me a shot, and I did a Prism album with him. And then we just started making records. And quickly we made a lot of records together. And And at one point it just became obvious that I had to move on. Yeah. Yeah. Just, working with Bruce and learning, and I just knew it was time to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And you started off engineering and then moved into a producer role. And when did that sort of shift?
Well, the thing is because I was a guitar player and writing songs with Paul Hyde.
Yeah.
That aspect was going on while I was working as an engineer. So, and one thing big, there's a famous guy, Mick Ronson, who was a guitar player for David Bowie. He produced 2 of our albums, and that I learned so much from him about how to make records. So it was a logical step, and I guess there's a certain ceiling in engineering that you get. And really, like I said, my passion is records. Yeah. So the engineering, I wanted to know how to make records, but then I really wanted to make records. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a rock star. Yeah. That's where it didn't happen. But I found a place where I should be, which is making records, and ended up producing. Yeah.
So here on the Vocal Lab, we aim to shine a light into the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career all over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Really, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of schools that you can learn engineering, but really, like the people at the Warehouse, Brian's studio, they've all been to schools, but you don't really learn until you do. Yeah. It's almost like med school. My daughter's an ER. She's a resident now. She's a doctor. But, you go to school, you learn, and then you do a residency and you start actually doing it. And I think that's where you really take off and learn actually what it is. Yeah. You got to do it. You got to make records, and lots of records.
Yeah. And that, well, again, we were chatting before the show, but that concept of the 10,000 hours, right? I've had a number of guests sort of refer to that concept. And you talked about when you were working, doing jingles and stuff, just building up your hours and learning your skill,
Yeah, the jingles were really good. A close friend of mine, Bob Clearmountain, a very famous engineer, producer, and mixer, just through the years talking to him, he was in New York and he did the same thing. He did jingles, and we're just discussing, it was like making a record in a day. You know, we'd record the band live, we'd do the backgrounds, we'd do the singing, and then we'd mix it for, you know, a minute.
Yeah.
But it was like making a record.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did where I made the switch, Roger Monk was sick one day, and all of a sudden I was in the chair, right?
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
And if you were starting all over again, is there anything that you absolutely would do the same all over again that you would make sure to repeat?
Well, I think that, like I said, I'm the sum of a lot of mistakes. Like I was a horrible engineer when I started, you know, because you have to learn to listen. And this is something that Roger and Dave taught me to do. It sounds so simple, learning to listen, but really the depth of like, you know how technically to use a compressor, but how do you do that musically?
Right.
You feel all that stuff. The musical part of engineering is a different aspect. There's a technical aspect to it.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much everybody, I use the same equipment that I used in 76.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's this standard on microphones and certain things like the Neves. I still use Neves that I did. And they're all vintage, but it's the same process. And even, you know, we moved on to digital.
Yeah.
So many people don't understand that analog, like we used to record, I talked to Bob about this actually. We used to record and set up, and on playback, we lost so much because the dynamics and the everything, it couldn't record what we were hearing when we were putting it in. So we'd EQ as soon as we played it back. So digital, when digital came around and you actually use the right equipment, it was fantastic because you were getting what we were hearing when we recorded a band.
Yeah. That, like big shift.
Big shift.
Yeah. And not to mention that you all of a sudden had a whole lot more at your disposal. I mean, I know on tape it was, I don't know how many tracks it was going up to by the time.
48 pretty much.
48.
Two 24 tracks.
But now I know Josh is in the studio and there was some track, and I think he told me he had like 500-600 tracks on some. Now, I mean, he's a bit bananas, but.
Yeah, the thing is it was so limited, and really the digital age, we kind of grew up with it. And it wasn't very good at the beginning. Yeah. It sounded horrible, etc. So, and then we started, and then Pro Tools and other kind of things came along. But then there's all these positives, like for instance, when it was tape, you know, we started comping when we had multiple like 48 track. Yeah. But before I started on 16 track. Yeah. So, you know, it's like if you punched in on a vocal, you were losing the previous take. Yeah. So, you know, the digital thing is like, you can record and you can keep it all. Yeah. And you can manipulate it. Yeah. 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 And so, and just to make one note, like this, the whole thing about auto-tune, we were tuning in the 80s without auto-tune. We'd load each syllable, right, into a delay, which sampled it, and then we could tune it up a cent or down a cent. But it took us a day to do a song. Oh my God. I didn't know that. Yeah, no, it's like Bon Jovi, everybody, and Michael Jackson, everybody now. We've been tuning way before, but it just took us so long. Okay. I did not know that it happened when it was analog, but that's a whole lot easier digital. A whole lot easier. Now the trend is not doing so much. Yeah. Not using 900 tracks. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Now it's coming back to there's something about having too many options. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think that, I don't know, I listen to some of the new stuff. There's pluses and minuses with everything, right? Mm-hmm. But some of the new stuff that's so perfect. And then you listen to, like, I don't know, old Eric Clapton, Crosscut Saw, and that kind of stuff. And it was so not perfect, but there's so much like vibe in it. Yeah. But it's
pretty loose.
And that's okay.
And that's part of its charm.
Well, yeah. Going through like really in the 80s as an engineer, I had the best thing about me was my snare drum sound.
Yeah.
How big could you get it? How loud could you get it? But I still go back, and this is what I'd say to the guys that I work with now, the younger engineers.
Yeah.
It all goes back to Little Mountain and tape. And actually, you see, right now, anybody can buy a computer and record.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand the basics of recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what the process of what I had is. I learned like all sorts of things that I still use and I teach to people. It's not like, it's really about wisdom because I'm so old. It's all those things that you learn from other people, Yeah.
And so let's talk about that piece, because in music, in all the different areas of music, artists, production, all the different places, education can be really formal. It can be very informal. It can be more like mentorship kind of style education. And you referred to taking a course, but you want to talk a bit about what your education looked like and how it ultimately impacted your career?
Well, back then in the 70s, the course was this course that was taught through America. It was 6 days.
Oh my God.
It was just the beginning. This is a microphone. This is a console.
Yeah.
And just learning the basic, that's all it was. So everything else was learned working at Little Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a long term. There's a couple of things that I've learned lately. And that is I was mixing a band at my studio in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, have I got any better?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I put on Working for the Weekend.
Yeah.
And the band, they were called American Bag. Now they're called Cadillac 3. And they basically sounded exactly the same sonically. So either I didn't learn anything, or that's the way I hear music. And I've decided that that's the way I hear music. That's how I hear records.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when people want to work with me, they like my perspective.
Right.
Like Bob Clearmountain's got his perspective.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned. And with all the equipment that you have today, like back then it was tape.
Yeah.
Right. It still goes to the same place because it doesn't matter how you get there.
Yeah.
So you can make a great record in your garage, but there's a thing. I wish I could just talk to everybody in their homes and just say, this is how you do the basic stuff.
Yeah.
Because the basic stuff helps.
Yes. I mean, speaking as someone who doesn't understand that, like I don't really get gear, and I don't.
Yeah.
So when I was doing a lot of songwriting and I would just demo my songs, literally just me and GarageBand and my piano or my guitar or whatever. Yeah. And my demos always sounded awful, but they would get the idea down, and then I could take it to somebody who could do something better with it, because I don't understand any of the basics of the gear and how to do anything in the recording process. But it also wasn't ever I wasn't interested enough in that part of it because I knew that wasn't the part I was ever going to do anything with. It was a vehicle for me just to get the idea down, to take it to somebody who knew more about it. Yeah.
I get that. And the thing with me, it was always about sounds.
Yeah.
So it's a constant, like I still learn now with everything and all the experience I've had. I'm still finding new ways to be better.
Yeah.
I've got lead vocals that was on a message machine on an iPhone.
Yeah.
With the Richie Sambora. The whole song is from his demo. We couldn't get it better. So we just converted it. This is the amazing thing about digital.
Yeah.
It's actually, and it's raw. It sounds like it was recorded in the 60s.
Yeah.
But you got to embrace. In other words, I don't follow rules when recording. I'm not a technical, like you say, you don't want to know. to be quite honest, I don't either.
Yeah.
There's more guys that are, and like Ron Obvious is a lot more technical than me. Okay. Because that's his thing. But I'm not, I'll do whatever. I break all the rules. Not purposely. It's just that, like, even at Little Mountain, I don't think we had that many dynamic microphones. They were all Neumanns. Yeah. And I brought the first dynamics because I saw them in magazines. Yeah. It was all collecting sounds. And that's what I've done. And the interesting thing about recording, what you learn is it's really the person, how they play, and a certain amount of gear, like the right kind of guitar, the right kind of amp. That's the majority of the sound. We're just recording it. Yeah. Because you think you fix it with EQ and stuff, and you can't. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I know, I think it's really interesting how it all fits together, and especially for artists who are coming in on the earlier side of their career who don't know those pieces. They don't necessarily know what, does and doesn't matter and what you can and can't do with it on the other end. So I think it's really good information to share. Do you want to talk a little bit about the relationships in your career? This is a question that I ask most of the guests on the show. And it's not that I'm specifically asking you to name names, although you can answer it in any way that you want to. Sure. But it's more about what are the relationships, personal or professional, that you feel have helped you get from where you started to where you are today?
That's a great question. I will say that what's interesting, and I actually talked about it when I talked to the people that came to my birthday party. What I learned is, like, as a producer and even as an engineer in the room, if you do it professionally, you go into a room with 5 strangers and you kind of got to be their best friend day one. Yeah. Whatever the personalities, right? And what you end up doing is a lot of albums, I do one album and then they move on or for whatever. And then there's ones where you do, like Metallica. I worked for them for 15 years. Yeah. I think I've worked for Bublé now 15 years. Motley, it's almost 35.
Holy cow.
Because that, when you get that deep, they become a family almost to you. Yeah. Right? So everything changes. It's got a lot to do with how you work with people. Yep. And really, as a professional, you got to learn how to be that person, be in the room. Yeah. So many people don't get that. Like Dexter and Noodles from the Offspring, they just bought a building and they're building a studio, and we've got to hire some assistants. And it wasn't that anybody who we're going to hire is somebody that can be in the room more than what school they went to. Like some irritating things. Like we trying this guy, and he was singing all the time. Yeah. And making suggestions because he went to school. Yeah. I don't think I said a word as an engineer for probably 10 years. Just soaking it all up, right? Not interrupting. Yeah. Anyway, that's really important to get along with people. Yeah. And like I said, and some of the people that have done multiple albums, we just click. Actually, when the Black Album, I couldn't take them anymore after 14 months. I said, don't call. Randy Staub and I said, just don't call. We're done, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, it was very big. But they turned out to be great friends. Yeah. Life friends.
I think it actually brings up an interesting point. So if I can refer to the Metallica documentary that I actually can't think of the name of right now.
It's okay.
But you know the one I'm talking about. But when Mike Fraser was on the show, he was talking about, I'm going to read his quote here because it's really pertinent. He said, I think they need to teach a course in psychology because that's a big part in the studio. You've got to learn how to tame multiple personalities into becoming a team and getting a good product. There's so many potential fights in the studio. The band can all get frustrated at each other, and you got to get them all talking and playing and friendly. So it takes a lot of psychology sometimes. It's almost having to trick them into behaving. And I thought it was really interesting watching that. It's been a few years since I've seen the documentary, but I thought it was really interesting watching that documentary because I thought that you did a really impressive job of managing some clashing personalities at what was clearly a difficult period of time for the band in terms of personality intersection. And I think that's a part of the role of producer that doesn't get addressed very often, is that sort of management of the personalities. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think this is where the years that I put in about being in the room. Yeah, you learn how to manage people. Like I said, there's a lot of people that I work a lot. I don't really like them, right? But I learned to work with them. Yeah, and usually, you know, it's pretty easy to figure people out. Yeah, at least musicians. Yeah, and people in the studio. And the thing is the studio, even some of the most amazing players that I know freak out when you put the record button on, you know, and you got to make them feel like they're in their living room. Yeah. And that's that thing. You got to make them comfortable. And that's when you get the best thing. And no matter what, I can tell you something that, like with Tommy Lee, when we did Dr. Feelgood, he came to Little Mountain, a great room, but he wasn't comfortable. I said, what's going on? Well, he says, I'm so used to hearing subs in my monitors. Yeah. Okay. And I said, well, we'll just put subs behind your drum kit. And everybody's going, you can't do that because the subs would get in all the mics. As it turned out, it was amazing. Yeah. Right? You can't do that. Yes, I can, because I want Tommy to be happy, to get the best performance. Yeah. That's what you do. And even with Metallica, I mean, every time I work with every individual, they clicked because I'm helping them do what they want to do. Now, the interesting thing about them is before me, they recorded in a very kind of different way. They would do it to a click. James would play the guitars and then they'd overdub the drums. Yep. And blah, blah, blah. And when I was talking to him, I said, I don't do it that way. But that's all they knew, because the same guy, that's how he recorded, right? So when I got in there, I said, well, I record everybody. And they're all going like, what? But that's all they knew. Yeah. Anyway, it's so important, that history and doing it. You find out what is good and what, I'm lucky working with a lot of people. I've just collected all these things. And this is how I do it. Even with Bublé, the stuff that I do is different from what Foster did with him. And really, I just set up really good players and we just cut it live, which goes back to Little Mountain. Yeah. And actually, Bublé loves that. Yeah. I think we did 3 songs in a day. The last thing with Willie Nelson and all the great musicians. Actually, that was after COVID. Yeah. All the guys, including myself, nobody had been in a studio for 15 months. All the guys I know. Yeah. Nobody, and when I got them all, we were almost crying, and we were so happy to be in a room recording with Bublé and all these great guys. Yeah. That was that period of time, it was so weird. And music is such a collective experience. Making music is such a collective experience. When you have to take the community aspect, that interpersonal aspect out of the making of music, I think it loses something. Everybody was doing Zoom. Yeah. And I mean, you can do it. You can send the track here and you record it there and you send the track there. So it's not that it can't functionally occur, but I don't know if the end product is the same. And certainly the joy in the making of, I don't think is the same. When you lose that, musicians, I think this is a thing that people don't necessarily understand. Musicians, that is their social sphere as well. So when you come together to make music together in the studio, those are your work people. Those are your social people. And when you lose that connection, it is very disconnecting to no longer have that. So that period of time, it was hard for everybody in COVID, but coming back together like that, I think it was a specific thing for musicians and studio folks. The great thing about COVID for me was that I got off the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So I went, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I'm not going into the studio. So it changed me for the good.
Yeah.
I realized that I'd been working too much.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of got more centered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Reno was on the show and he was saying the same thing. It was the first time in 30 years he hadn't just been on the road.
Yeah.
All the time. And he said, I actually discovered I liked being at home.
Exactly.
Who knew?
Who knew? It's the same for me.
Yeah. Everyone's routine in the studio looks different. Do you want to talk a little bit about your routine in the studio when you're making a record? I mean, you referred to recording everybody together, but do you want to talk a little bit about the process in the studio?
Well, part of the, let's put it this way. When I first started, the first song I wrote, and I got a SOCAN check.
Yeah.
Okay. So I decided that what I learned about instruments, like synths and stuff that I can't even play, I realized that there's an inspiration. Like I'll buy a guitar because it inspires me.
Yeah.
Not because everybody else is using it. So back when I was an assistant, oh my God, I wrote a song and I got money. So I decided that all the money that I get from writing, I would invest back into buying a guitar, an amplifier, a synth, whatever, a piece of recording gear. And that was just my inspiration. I separated. So anything I did work-wise, that's my family and everything else. But it's constantly being inspired with stuff. I still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still do it. I think I bought 3 things here. But when I get home, I've got to start getting rid of all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I got way too much of it. Yeah, it's that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Downsizing.
Do you have like if you are working with a band, can you walk me through the process from when you first get the call, hey, will you produce a record for us, to what that looks like from that phone call to when the record is done, how you walk through that with the band, what the prep is and all that?
Oh yeah, this is the thing that I learned from Bruce Fairbairn is pre-production.
Yeah.
How things work. When it was stupid in the 80s, you go in with ideas and it would take a year, right? But everybody learned that there's this thing that if you actually figure it out and then you just record over like a month rather than a year. So that is where I start. And it's really about the songs. And I don't even know what it's going to sound like. You have a meeting with bands and you talk about what they want to do. The record never sounds like that conversation. Yeah. Because like the Black Album, we talked about this and that, and it ends up being the time. It ends up being the culture. It ends up being their lives. And we just work on it. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
It's not what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And that happens pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
Once you get in there, it all changes. And that's what's really incredible about music and even playing live. You see, if you lock yourself into something very mechanical, you can't really change it. When you're cutting something live, you can say, well, we got to change the feel of the verse.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that has always worked. So that's the basics. So I just go through the songs. I just did this, finished a band from Montreal, The Damn Truth. And I worked with them before. Yeah. And they sent me some new stuff. And I said, I was honest with them. I said, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I said, so right. And they kept sending me. Okay. And they didn't give up.
Yeah.
And they spent a year writing the songs.
Yeah.
And we finally got to 11 songs. And we recorded in the whole album in a week. Yeah. Because because they're talented.
Yeah.
Okay. But they actually took the time not to listen to me and follow my instructions, but I just said, I was just honest. I said, you can be better. Yeah. And through the process, they are better. Yeah. They got how to write better, arrange better. And somebody just showed, not say you're no good. Right. Just try, because this is work. You know, I've talked to other people, my peers that I've known, And we just worked a lot.
Yeah.
We're always in the studio.
Yeah.
Mike Fraser, myself, Randy Staub, all the guys I know, Dave, we all just lived at Little Mountain.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah. Mike Fraser literally lived at Little Mountain.
He did.
When you're in that process with a band and it's, you need to write, it in that pre-production phase, some producers get involved in the writing, some don't. Some get involved in sort of editing the song structure, which it can get blurry in terms of songwriting and whatever. How much do you get involved in the songwriting or editing, or do you just tell them to keep going until it gets there? Or does it vary?
No, it varies.
Yeah.
I decided a long time ago that's not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I write, but I don't want to do the writing game with people.
Yeah.
I think as a producer, it gets in the way.
Yeah.
I don't want to change a band.
Yeah.
I don't want me to put a stamp on it.
Yeah.
So, that's what I saw with other guys that work that do change. And some people hire a producer for the sound only, mm-hmm. and they write with them. That's what they do. That's not what I do. Mm-hmm. But having said that, there's times when I just get involved, mm-hmm. and usually I don't take credit, and mm-hmm. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I just want to make records.
Yeah.
I don't care about because the writing game is a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't interfere with that. I stay away from it.
Over the years, the term producer has actually sort of changed in its definition.
Yeah.
Today, in today's terms, it can still mean what it meant 30, 40 years ago, but sometimes it also means somebody who makes beats and is almost more like what I would think of as a DJ. That some people use the term producer in that context. And some people, it's more what I think of as producer, which is, what it more traditionally was 20, 30 years ago. And where it's the full everything, including like project manager. So managing the time and the budget and the timelines to stay on budget and all of those pieces. How much of that part of it is...
I'm horrible at budgets. You see, because I come from the musician thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And whatever it takes to get it done. And I pissed off a lot of record companies and stuff. And actually, who was great at it was Bruce Fairbairn. Mm-hmm. He did it. He budgeted. And, for instance, he went to dinner every night at home, right?
Yeah.
So he's in the middle of a vocal with Steven Tyler. He goes, okay, I got to go home.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it in this time. This is the money we have. Yeah. And he did it. And for me, it was like bizarre.
Yeah.
But you see, I admire that.
Yeah.
And I have this wonderful person at Bruce Allen Talent who manages me and keeps me on time. Sandy Bathgate.
Yes.
Right? I mean, to organize what's going on in here takes a very special person.
I think that much can be said and many kudos should be given to the people who are the assistants and the people who manage the tasks for the artistic brains, because the artistic and creative brains don't always do the I don't want to say task management, but the non-creative task management doesn't come easily all the time.
I'm just going to say it. I'm super ADHD.
Mm-hmm. It's very common with
very
brains.
Very, very common. Everything else is just a mess with me. Drives my wife crazy. But the funny thing is in trying to, for instance, well, I'm not going to get too deeply into this, but basically as a young kid, mm-hmm. right, I had ADHD. And when, I grew up in the 60s, mm-hmm. Nobody talked about ADHD. No. They thought you were lazy. They thought you were stupid. Mm-hmm. That's where I started. Mm-hmm. So there's this thing all along that I was never good enough.
Yeah.
That has been with me. You know, the working thing, why I did album after album, because I thought it was going to all go away.
Wow. I think that that is actually such an important thing for younger people to hear, that even at the level of success that you have achieved in your career, that has still been a pervasive thought.
My whole life.
Yeah.
I thought that everybody figured out I had no idea what I was doing. Just the distortions that you do, just that comes from my childhood.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate. I mean, that sense of imposter syndrome.
Yes. And there's this thing that in ADHD, the one thing is you can hyperfocus.
Yep.
And what I hyperfocus on is what I do.
Yep.
So like the doctors like that I've talked to, the therapists, et cetera, they all say, you just got the best job in the world for somebody that's got ADHD because of what I do.
And you have the ability to hyper-focus on the thing that you want to hyper-focus on and get paid for it. It's sort of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. But what I found and once COVID, I had the balance wrong.
Right.
I had the balance wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It worked out great. But going back, you said, what would I change? I changed the balance between life and work better.
Yeah. Do you find that so since discovering that, do you find that you have shifted the balance and does it make a difference?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm a lot happier.
Yeah.
When I found out what was going on. You know?
Yeah. I think that the pandemic was, I mean, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of really awful things about it. Of course. And I'm not going to lie, there were parts of it that I loved. I loved being home and having that like insular time with my kids that they were almost out of the house at that point. I never thought I was going to have that kind of time with them again. I loved that the world stopped and there was nothing else I could do. So I really just got to focus on being home with my kids, and I didn't have any other responsibilities to live up to because everything else went away. And it was this, I was a little bit sad when the world started again.
I think a lot of people had that same experience. I know I know a lot of people had that same experience.
Yeah.
It was really just giving us perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as bad as it worked out great for me.
Yeah. Well, and a gift that you took that and actually made changes in your life to how you balance everything. Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.